Greetings, humans. If you had tuned in last Wednesday, you would have seen that we abducted your sweet Kanaska and took her into a UFO. We like to do that periodically to make sure her brain is working correctly. Anyway, she will be with you shortly. Once we get her off the ship, she's going to wake up from her sleeping episode. We basically just put a little machine in front of her face and we pressed a button and then she won't remember a thing. Anyway, I'm out of here. I got stuff to do today, so don't go anywhere. We've got another episode of The Witching Hours coming up right now.
Must have fallen asleep. Oh shit, I gotta do my show. You are tuned to The Witching Hours, and I'm your host, Kanaska Carter. Today we're going to be talking about CERN and the Hadron Collider that is 100 meters underground in between Sweden and France. So it is the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. Now, what does CERN do? Well, they have 10,000 scientists that try to understand the universe and what is going on in our universe. So there's nations collaborating worldwide, and they also created the World Wide Web. So without CERN, we wouldn't have the World Wide Web. We wouldn't even be able to talk to each other on the internet. So one of the main discoveries from CERN was the Higgs boson, and this was discovered July 4th, 2012. And there's so many theories and people talking about how this is related to the Mandela effect and how it could be affecting our reality potentially. Who knows? So today I'm just going to briefly describe to you what CERN is, what they do, and what the Higgs boson is. So it is a 27-kilometer ring that is in between Sweden and France, and it is 100 meters underground. So several tens of millions of collisions happen each second. So these collisions create the conditions of the first moments of the universe. And this is what has people feeling suspicious. Like, why are they trying to recreate the first moments of the universe? Well, they're trying to understand how the universe was created. The only thing about that I'm thinking is, how do you know how the universe was created when none of us were there when it was created? It's only a theory to think that these conditions would create the universe, right? So they have these huge detectors that study the collisions. And so in 2012, they had the discovery of the Higgs boson particle. And 2018, there was evidence of another particle that had 4 quarks, a teraquark, also measuring the spectrum of antihydrogen as well. And they also created the first 3D color X-ray of the human body, which is kind of cool. So the Higgs field is a hypothetical force field that was discovered by Dr. Peter Field, which pervades the entire universe. So it's very similar to like the air that is surrounding us. We cannot see it, but we can feel it. We can sense it with our bodies. If the wind blows at you, you're going to feel the air that is surrounding you. So it's there, it can be detected, but we are unable to see it. So that is very similar to the Higgs field. So the Higgs field, it gives mass to elementary particles. And elementary particles are the building blocks of our universe. So atoms are actually made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons are fundamental. Neutrons and protons are made of quarks, so it goes smaller. Fermions make up matter, and bosons carry forces. So the application of energy to the particles created the Higgs boson, which was the discovery that they had July 4th, 2012. So as soon as the Higgs boson is created, it decays immediately and then instantly separates into lighter particles. So the universe is a collection of quantum fields. So why am I talking about this? Well, Sally Field is a common, there's a common Mandela effect that's going on with her that people have been talking about. And they're speaking about how basically her brother works at CERN. Rick Field is a CMS physicist at CERN. And he was one of the scientists that helped discover the Higgs boson when it was discovered in 2012. And there's all these theories. People are talking about how the world ended in 2012 and all of this, right? So who knows? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. So Sally Field's brother, well, Sally Field, I remember her name being Sally Fields. And the S was always there. I watched Forrest Gump so many times growing up. I watched Mrs. Doubtfire so many times growing up. And she always had an S at the end of her name. There's even a few people saying Sally Fields as I was watching other videos about the Mandela effect associated with her. But anyway, so 1 in a billion collisions create a Higgs boson particle. So that's 1 Higgs boson per second. And then they add the energies of the photons to get the mass of the Higgs. So after it separates into lighter particles, they then they add the energies of those photons. So her name change was part of the Mandela effect. And her famous speech, she said, "You like me. You really like me." So she ended up winning an Oscar for Places in the Heart. And that was when she gave her famous speech. But the actual speech, it turns out, was "You like me. Right now, you like me." And it's been quoted so many times. So what's going on there? Is it a case of they just heard it wrong? They're misremembering her name, misremembering the speech. Also in Mrs. Doubtfire, there's a scene where he throws a piece of fruit, and Sally Field was actually in this movie. Robin Williams throws a piece of fruit, and he says it was a drive-by fruiting. But it's actually, the quote has been changed to a run-by fruiting. So this has people thinking, is that another Mandela effect associated with Sally Field? Or Sally Fields, as many people remember as. So the theory is because they're creating the conditions of the first moments of the universe every second underground, who is to say that this couldn't possibly affect our reality, our timelines, or even open portals? Like, how do we know that's not possible? By creating new particles that, we're doing this every single second. We're colliding at almost the speed of light. How do we know we're not opening up a portal to something coming through and potentially changing our timelines, potentially changing what's going on in the world? And could this cause strange things to happen? So who knows? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that is the Mandela effect associated with Sally Field. Now, there was another potential Mandela effect with Forrest Gump, but she does actually say that line at a different part in the movie, so I think people have that mixed up about life is like a box of chocolates. She does say that at one point, and people have been misremembering that a little bit. But it opens up this conversation to, are we messing with our reality by creating these science experiments underground? And how do we know that that is actually how the world first came to be? How do we know that? We don't, right? We can only theorize. So I don't know. Maybe it is some good things coming from it. And maybe it is creating a portal that is, or it's just creating an effect that's changing our universe. Now, I saw this really strange video on TikTok the other day, And this woman was describing a situation she had, and basically what happened was she was driving with her friend she was just about to merge onto the highway. And what happened was she was just about to go onto the freeway. She was driving, and then all of a sudden, what happened was a second later, they ended up on a military base, and on one side of them was a barbed wire fence. And basically, now her friend was driving, and she wasn't driving anymore. And so this caused them to panic because they saw a warning sign to the right, and it was saying that it was a live minefield. They ended up being interviewed by Interpol. They were interviewed by the military, wondering how they got there. So I'm wondering if some sort of an experiment had happened, or they went through some sort of a portal, because like within a split second they have gone from trying to merge onto the highway to suddenly now being on a military base where there's a live minefield. And she claims that they just let them go. And why was her friend now driving? So it makes no sense. It really makes no sense what's going on there. So I thought that was really interesting. Like, maybe our reality is not exactly what we perceive it to be, and strange things can happen. Or as Einstein said, spooky things happening at a distance is what he was speaking about. Spooky action at a distance, I think, is what he had said. Don't quote me on that. But there's just so much going on in our universe that we don't know. Things that are happening around us that we can't even see, but it can be detected. So who's to say that these science experiments aren't affecting our reality? Potentially causing what is known as the Mandela effect, or causing glitches in our reality, glitches in our timeline. Maybe we're not supposed to be doing these experiments. You know, maybe it is messing up things, or messing up the alleged simulation that we live in. So I guess only time will tell. Maybe all will be revealed in time. Perhaps we're overthinking it, and that CERN has absolutely nothing to do with this. But it is, many people view it as the God particle, is what they call it, even though some people don't like that name. So that's the connection with Sally Field and CERN, and people are just wondering what is going on there. So the next story I want to tell you is about, I was just about to meet with my client, and my laptop had broken. This was actually happened on July 4th, which is the same day that they created the Higgs boson, but it was not the same year. Anyway, unrelated, but I thought I would mention it. So I was like, this is horrible. I don't have any music to listen to while we're going to do this appointment for my client. And shortly after, I hear the radio turn on out near the esthetician's place. So I was like, okay, that's weird. And so I went out there. Yeah, the music was on. I was like, okay, that was strange. Why did the music turn on, right? Just as I was wishing for music, too. And then the appointment was over. And within an hour after the music had started, it shut off on its own by itself. And this was actually, I believe, around the same birthday as my grandmother. I was thinking about her that day. So who knows, maybe that was her spirit coming through. But the strangest thing was, the next day, I told the esthetician, I said, yesterday your radio turned on by itself. Right when I was like wishing for music because my laptop had broken. And then an hour later after that, it turned off by itself. And she said, that radio wasn't even plugged in. I was so freaked out. She was so freaked out. Like, it was crazy. It was insane. It was definitely a paranormal experience, that's for sure. I do want to talk a little bit about shadow beings today. So, many years ago, I lived in this haunted house. And I've lived in haunted houses my whole life, right? So this place had so many different spirits, and I remember reading one day, I was reading a book in the living room, and I saw these, it felt like these shadows were peering over my shoulders, watching what I was doing or reading the book from behind me. And then the weirdest thing about that experience, there were so many different things that happened, like the water would turn on by itself. I remember looking at the light switch one time and it was clicking on and off in front of me as I was on the phone talking to somebody. So one day, I guess my mother had had enough and she took us outside, me and my brother, and she said, "Don't talk about this inside of the house, but this house is haunted. We have to move." We were like, "Why? What's going on?" She said, "Last night I got flipped in my bed by a black shadow. I got flipped over by a black shadow." So she said, "Don't talk about it in the house." And I was an idiot. I went inside and told it's now my ex-boyfriend, my boyfriend at the time, and I said, "We have to move. This house is haunted. Last night Mom got flipped in her bed by a black shadow." And as soon as the words had escaped my mouth, all of the lights turned off, and then 1 minute later they all turned back on. It was like whatever force was in that home had acknowledged that I was speaking about it. And I've done so many interviews all over the world. People all over the world when I had my FM radio show. And so many people, they experience shadow beings. And it is a very common experience, even during sleep paralysis as well. So it could be a dark entity. It could just be something else entirely. Who knows, right? But that house was extremely haunted. And that is just one of many stories about the haunted houses I've lived in. So that is it for the Witching Hours this week. I will be posting new episodes every single Wednesday night. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this episode, and I hope you have the best week of your entire existence. Until next time, take care. I'm your host, Kanaska Carter.